Bhagavan is reminding us that we are, as always, in his hands. What I'm going to be talking about today is verse 33 of Uڵḷadu Nāṛpadu. This verse has 4 sentences, so I will go through it sentence by sentence. In the first sentence, Bhagavan says, eṉṇai yaṟiyēṉā, eṉṇai aṟindēṉā, eṉṇal nahaippukku iḍaṉ āhum. That means saying, I know myself, I have not known myself, is ground for ridicule. That implies saying either I do not know myself or I have known myself is ground for ridicule. In the Kalivemba version, Bhagavan extended this first sentence by adding before it an adverbial clause, uڵḷadu, which means besides that. This refers to the previous verse in which he said, when the Vedas proclaim that is you, instead of oneself being knowing oneself as what, which implies instead of oneself being as one is, by knowing oneself, by investigating what am I, thinking I am that, not this, which again implies I am that Brahman, I am not this body or mind, is due to non-existence of strength. Here the strength referred to is the strength of bhakti and vairagya, because that alone is always seated as oneself. That is, if we lack the in order to turn within, we need bhakti and vairagya. We need great love to turn within, and consequent freedom from desire to attend to other things. The greater our bhakti, the greater our love to attend to ourselves, the greater also will be our vairagya, our freedom from desire to attend to anything else. So, having said that in that verse, there he is. He's pointing out that meditating "I am that, not this" is not is only for those who lack the strength of bhakti and vairagya to turn within. In this verse, he says, besides that, saying I do not know myself or I have known myself is ground for ridicule. Then the next sentence, he says, he simply asks a question, eṉṇai. Eṉṇai in this context means why. So why is it grounds for ridicule to say I do not know myself or I have known myself? He answered that in the third sentence. Taṉaiviḍayam ākka iru taṉuṇḍō. That means to make oneself an object are there 2 selves. The word he uses here for object is viḍayam, which is a Tamil form of the Sanskrit word vishaya, which has a range of meanings, but in this context it means an object in the sense of the object as opposed to the subject, something known as other than oneself, the knower. In duality, the basis of all duality is the basic duality is subject-object, the knower and the known, and the things known, the perceiver and the things perceived, the ego and phenomena. This is the basic duality. So all to know anything other than ourselves, that other thing is a vishaya, an object known by us. So we can either know or not know other things. But since we ourselves are one, how can we, well, Bhagavan puts this as a rhetorical question. To make oneself an object, are there 2 selves? That implies a knowing self and a known self. Obviously, there aren't 2 selves, we are one. So knowing ourselves is quite unlike knowing anything else. And other things we either know or we don't know. There's a basic duality there, knowledge and ignorance. mention any object, either it's an object we know or it's an object we don't know. But oneself is not like that. There is never a time when we do not know ourselves, because knowing ourselves simply means being aware of ourselves. We are always self-aware. We are always aware of ourselves as I am. We're aware of our existence. So that basic self-awareness is ever present, not only in waking and dream when we're aware of other things, but even in sleep when we're not aware of anything else. We are aware of ourselves. We are aware of our existence. After waking from sleep, we very clearly know I was asleep. That means we were aware of our existence in sleep. So that is what is called self-knowledge, atmaññāna, is nothing other than self-awareness. But we are always self-aware, so in that sense, atmaññāna is never absent. But because we are now aware of ourselves as if we were a person, a body, we are not knowing ourselves as we actually are. So what is called atmaññāna or self-knowledge is, the basic meaning of atmaññāna is self-awareness. But the sense in which the term atmaññāna is usually used, it means not just self-awareness, but awareness of ourselves as we actually are, as opposed to awareness of ourselves as something that we are not, namely this body. Or any other body, whatever body we currently take to be ourselves. So since we are one, since there are no two selves, since we don't have there's not a knowing self and a known self, to talk of knowing oneself as if it's something that he said, as he said in the previous sentence, saying I do not know myself or I have known myself, both are grounds for ridicule. This is answered by this. That is, to say I do not know myself is ridiculous because we're always aware of ourselves. To say I have known myself is equally ridiculous because it implies that previously we didn't know ourselves. Moreover, as Bhagavan used to say, jnana me jnani, jnana alone is the jnani. That's a very simple statement, but it has a very deep meaning. That is, what the jnani, the one who has atmaññāna, is nothing other than that atmaññāna itself. That is, as a person, as an ego, we cannot know ourselves as we actually are, because so long as we are aware of ourselves as I am this body, I am this person, in other words, so long as we rise as ego, we are not aware of ourselves as we actually are. We're aware of ourselves, but as something other than what we actually are. So as ego, we can never know ourselves. When we do know ourselves as we actually are, what knows ourselves as we actually are is our real nature, which always knows itself as it actually is. That is, Atma-swarupa is never self-ignorant. It is because Atma-swarupa is nothing but pure self-awareness. Pure self-awareness can never be aware of itself as anything other than what it is. So the pure self-awareness, which is our real nature, is always aware of itself as it actually is. So the difference between ajnana and atmaññāna, ajnana is the state of self-ignorance. That is the state in which we're aware of ourselves as something other than what we actually are. That is the state of ego. So what is called, in contrast to that, atmaññāna is the state in which there is no ego, and therefore no awareness of ourselves as anything other than what we actually are. So the pure self-awareness is always aware of itself, so it will not say, I have known myself, because there's never a moment when it doesn't know itself. In fact, there's never a moment, to tell the truth, because it is pure self-awareness is beyond time. Time is just a phenomenon which appears in order to time is just a measure of change. Without time, there could be no change. Without change, there would be no time. But since our real nature is immutable, it can never change, even in the slightest, it is beyond time. Time exists only for ego. Only when we rise as ego does time seem to exist. If anyone says, I have known myself, they are still identifying themselves as a person, and therefore they haven't really known themselves. So to say either I do not know myself or I have known myself, both are equally ridiculous, according to Bhagavan. As I said, in this third sentence, he explains why he says it's ridiculous, because he says, taṉaiviḍayam ākka iru taṉuṇḍō. To make oneself an object, are there two selves? And again, that's a rhetorical question, but to drive home the point, the implication of this rhetorical question, in the fourth and final sentence, he says, oṇḍṛai aṉaivar aṇubhūti uṇmai. Oṇḍṛai means being one, that is being single, being one in the sense of being single, is the truth, uṇmai, aṇaivar the experience of everyone. And then the final word or particle in the verse is āl. Āl, in this context, we can either take it, well, generally, often āl is used in poetry as a poetic expletive, just to complete the verse. So we can take it as a poetic expletive. That's probably the sense in which it's meant. But we can also take it to mean because, which is appropriate in this context. So this final sentence either means being one is the truth, the experience of everyone, or because being one is the truth, the experience of everyone. So adding because there is optional. It's not inappropriate, but it's not necessary, because it doesn't really change the meaning in any significant way, whether we interpret āl as an expletive or as because. Bhagavan says, because being one is the truth, then aṇaivar means the experience of everyone. We could translate this as the truth of the experience of everyone, or we could take it as aṇaivar being in opposition to truth, in opposition to uṇmai, which means the truth. So it can either mean being one is the truth of the experience of everyone, or being one is the truth, the experience of everyone, implying, as is known, that each of us very clearly experiences ourselves as one. We never experience ourselves as two. We may identify ourselves with a collection of things. A collection of things means body, mind, intellect, will, and so on. This is a collection of things, but even this bundle, all these five sheaths, that is the physical body, the life, the mind, the intellect, and the will, these are called the five sheaths. These are a single package. That's why Bhagavan says collectively they are what is referred to by the term body. When we say I am this body, we are identifying ourselves not just with the physical body, because we never experience a dead body as ourselves. So we always experience ourselves as a living body, and we never experience ourselves as a sleeping body. So we experience ourselves as a body that seems to be waking, which means that the mind, intellect, and will are all operating there. So we never experience any of the five sheaths, any one of the five sheaths, without experiencing all four, or all the other four. So we experience them collectively, all five of them, as ourselves. So though they are five components, they make one whole. So even when we are taking ourselves to be these five sheaths, we still experience ourselves as one. I am one person, I'm not two people. So these five sheaths together make up the person whom we seem to be. That person is one, not many, though it may seem to be to consist of different elements. It's actually, but it's a single whole. So it's the experience of everyone, but I am one. So since I am one, there's no, we cannot know ourselves as an object. We can only know ourselves as self-awareness, not as anything else. So we can explain what Bhagavan is saying in this verse by saying, that is, since we always experience ourselves as one, we are never not aware of ourselves. So atmajnana, self-knowledge or self-awareness, is not something that we are yet to attain, but is our very nature. And hence, what is called the attainment of atmajnana is actually not a gain of anything, but a loss of everything, along with its root, ego, which is merely a false awareness of ourselves. An awareness of that is an awareness of ourselves, something other than what we actually are. And when ego is lost, there's no one left to say either I have known there's no one left to say I have known myself, because what remains is only our real nature, which is pure, infinite, eternal, and immutable self-awareness, and which therefore obviously has no need to say I have known myself. So this indirectly in this verse, Bhagavan is firstly he's telling us, for those of us who are honest with ourselves, who say, no, I don't know myself, Bhagavan says, even that is not true. It's because we rise as ego, but we seem to not know what we actually are. But if we turn our attention within and see, to see what is this ego that I now seem to be, we find no such thing. And what we find, the residue, what alone remains, is our real nature, Atmaswarupa, which is pure self-awareness, atmajnana. So there's no one left to say I have known myself once ego has died. So long as ego is alive, ego is nothing but self-ignorance. So the ego itself is a ground for ridicule. So either way, it's whether we say I have known myself or I have not known myself, both are equally ridiculous. And indirectly, in this verse, Bhagavan is giving us a warning against all, in the spiritual path, Sadhguru used to say, if you want to cheat people, the easiest way to cheat people is in spirituality. Because he said, he gave an example, he said, if you go to a vegetable market and you make a pile of stones and say that they are brinjal, that is aubergine, and try to sell them as aubergine, everyone who comes to the market knows what is an aubergine. So you won't be able to sell any of your stones as aubergine. If you go to a diamond market with some glass beads and try to sell your glass beads, you may be, as diamonds, you may be able to fool a few people, because not everyone who comes to the diamond market is able to tell the difference between a genuine diamond and a glass bead. But if you go to the spiritual market, you can sell anything and everything, because nobody who goes to the spiritual market actually knows what is true spirituality. So in the name of spirituality, so many things are being sold. And of course, it is widely recognized that the highest attainment in spirituality is atmajnana. So there are so many wolves out there, wolves in lamb's clothing, who are waiting to take advantage of people. And the easiest way, if you want to cheat people in spirituality, is to say, I am an atmajnani, I have known myself. Because who can prove that you haven't known yourself? And generally people in the spiritual path, they're looking for something to believe, well, particularly in the more than spiritual path, because the true spiritual path isn't about belief, as Bhagavan has taught us. True spirituality is about questioning everything, even even what we seem to be, we have to question. So the ultimate question of spirituality is, who am I? That is, people generally have doubts about all other things, but doubting oneself is the one thing most of us are not ready to do. Bhagavan says, even to doubt, who am I? That is it. So spirituality is not so much about believing as about questioning everything. But in religion, many people who come to the spiritual path are religiously inclined. They want something to believe. So if I say I'm an Atmajnani, I've attained Atmajnana, I can give. If you come and sit in my presence, you will feel peace in my presence, and then I'll be able to transmit Atmajnana to you. All sorts of things people are claiming or believing. It's so easy in the spiritual line because nobody really knows. How can we who are Ajnanis know who is a Jnani? According to Bhagavan, whenever people ask Bhagavan, is such and such a person a Jnani or not a Jnani? Bhagavan said, there is only one Jnani, and you are that. Because Bhagavan is always pointing us back to ourselves. When we don't know that we ourselves are the Jnani, how can we see others as Jnani? In fact, seeing others is itself a sign of Ajnana. In the state of Jnana, there are no others. So it's this whole thing about Jnani and Ajnani, it's all ground for ridicule, according to Bhagavan. So if anyone is claiming, I have known myself, I am an Atmajnani, I am self-realized, I can give you what I've got, Bhagavan is indirectly telling us through this verse, but they are frauds. Bhagavan never said, I can give you what I've got. If anyone asked Bhagavan, can you give me what you've got? He would say, no, I cannot, because it's already yours. I don't have anything that you don't have. All you need to do is jettison the ego, get rid of all that is surplus, and what remains is jnana. Bhagavan used to give an analogy. If you've got a room full of clutter, full of old furniture and piles of rubbish and all sorts of things, if you want to bring in space, how can you bring space into that room? You have to throw everything in the room out, and then the space that was always there is there. Likewise, Atmajnana is not something newly to be gained. If we throw out the ego, and when we throw out the ego, we throw out everything else, because everything else seems to exist only in the view of ego. So if we get rid of ego, and thereby get rid of everything else, what remains? That is Atmajnana. So nothing, Atmajnana, Bhagavan said, there's nothing new to gain. Atmajnana is not a gain, it's a loss of everything. Giving up everything else, what remains is Atmajnana. So Bhagavan said, I cannot give you what I've got because you've got it already. All you need to do is give up everything else, and what remains is Atmajnana. So Bhagavan was very, very simple, both in his style, both in his life, the way he lived his life, and in the way he gave teachings. Because in Bhagavan's view, there is no such thing as Ajnana, and therefore there are no Ajnanas. Bhagavan wouldn't of his own accord give teachings to anyone. Only because we go to him and ask him for teachings, then he answers. But of his own accord, he wouldn't teach anything to anyone, because in his view, there was firstly there were no others, there was no ajnana, there was no bondage, and therefore there was no need for liberation or for jnana or anything, because all that actually exists. As the Bhagavan says in verse 13 of Uḷḷadu Nāṛpadu, jnanamam taṇai, oneself who is jnana alone is real. So nothing else is, so that alone is what actually exists. So Bhagavan lived what he taught. He exemplified what he taught us. So he's quite different to all these would-be gurus nowadays who are claiming, I am self-realized, I can give you what I've got, come to me, sit in my presence, and I will give you and and at the same time you can pay $1,000 or whatever I mean, they do it in so many ways, but I mean, there's a huge amount of fraud in the spiritual market at different levels. I mean, some people are out and out frauds. Some of the would-be gurus, they may genuinely believe that they have attained something, but they've got something that other people haven't got. But they are just the blind leading the blind. They've deluded themselves about their own attainment, and they're deluding others. So this, because Bhagavan exemplified what is the true guru. In the view of the true guru means the Atmajnani, there is no ajnana. So that's why Bhagavan often said, when people asked him, Bhagavan said, I don't see myself as a guru. Because to see yourself as a guru, you have to see others. But in Bhagavan's view, there were no others, so there was no guru or no need for a guru. That is the highest. But then when people asked him, but then Bhagavan, isn't it said guru is necessary? Yes, he said, guru, one meaning of guru is heavy. So Bhagavan said, so long as there's guru, so long as there's lagu means light, what is not heavy, so long as there's lagu, guru is needed. But indirectly, saying in a metaphorical way, so long as there's ajnana, then the guru is needed. But he doesn't acknowledge the existence of the ajnana, at least not in his perspective. He doesn't deny it from our perspective, but he doesn't acknowledge it from his perspective. So Bhagavan's teachings are something so unique and so special. Of course, basically Bhagavan is teaching Advaita philosophy, but the way he taught Advaita and the subtle, firstly the simplicity, the clarity, the subtlety and the depth of his teachings are quite unlike anything that we've seen before. Okay, all the same truths were told in a roundabout way in other texts, but have been grossly misunderstood and misinterpreted. But Bhagavan has come and made it all very simple, clear. But in making it simple and clear, he hasn't in any way trivialized it, quite the opposite. He's brought out subtle truths which were not so clear in any of the old texts. Subtle and very, very deep truths. So this verse is one example of this. Indirect, I mean, we all come to Bhagavan because we want self-knowledge. But Bhagavan indirectly says, there's nothing in this verse, there's nothing to be attained. But we have to, of course, understand this verse in the context of the whole of Uḷḷadu Nāṛpadu. That is what is called self-knowledge in the realm of duality, where there seems to be jnana and ajnana. What is called jnana is nothing but the death of ego. But that is not an achievement. That is not a gain. That we're not adding anything to ourselves by gaining that jnana. Because Bhagavan said, whatever is gained, whatever comes has to go. So whatever is newly gained will one day be lost. So there's nothing new for us to gain. So all we need to do is to lose everything, including the root of everything, which is ego. And then what remains is our real nature, which is Atmajnana. So if any of you have any questions, either about this verse or about anything else.
I do have a question. Michael, the question is, so that the thing about losing, shedding everything that we have, I want to get to the mechanics of that. Exactly what we should be doing. Looks like it's a repetitive mechanical process that needs to be done continuously, because the In my case, anyways, the vasanas are extremely strong, extremely. So the repetition needs to be almost like every nanosecond.
Yeah.
It needs to happen whenever the thought arises. We need to direct it back to what the source is.
Yes.
But you know, in spite of the fact that theory is so strong that that we don't need to add anything, the soul is full in its effulgence, which is it's complete by itself. The ego always shows that there is something lacking, and I seem to get back into the trap again and again, regardless of how many times I keep hearing what you just said.
Well, as you say, the problem we're all up against is our vasanas. What are our vasanas? Our vasanas are basically all the outgoing elements of our will. They're the Vishaya vasanas. That is all our likes, our dislikes, our desires, our attachments, our hopes, our fears. In seed form are called vasanas. These are the things that impel us to go outwards. But whose vasanas are there? Who is it who likes this, who dislikes that? Who is it who desires this and is averse to that? Who is it who is attached to this and not so attached to that? Who is it who fears this and has no fear of that? Who is it who's hoping for one thing and not hoping for another thing? Who is that? It is only ourself as ego. So the root of all vasanas, the root of all our desires, is only ourself as ego. So Bhagavan has diagnosed the root problem. The root problem is ego. So if we get rid of ego, will we get rid of all these things? So how to give up everything, Bhagavan has explained very, very clearly in verse 26, which we did a few months ago, verse 26 of Uḷḷadu Nāṛpadu, that is. He said, āhandayundayin anatumundahum. If ego comes into existence, everything comes into existence. Āhandayindrail indru anatam. If ego doesn't exist, everything doesn't exist. Āhandaye yavamam. Ego itself is everything. Adalal yadu idu endru nadale ovadal yavam eṇṇai. That means therefore know that investigating what this is alone is giving up everything. What this is means ego. Why is investigating ego giving up everything? Because ego seems to exist only so long as we attend to things other than ourselves. If we turn our attention back to see who am I, this ego will dissolve and disappear. In other words, by investigating ego, we're giving up ego. And since everything else depends for its semi-existence upon the semi-existence of ego, by investigating ego, we are giving up not only ego, but everything else. So the only way to give up everything is to investigate ego. And as I said, only if we get rid of ego can we get rid of all vasanas. However, there's a bit of a catch here. In order to investigate ego, we have to have that bhakti and vairagya. Bhakti, as I explained when I was referring to the previous verse, bhakti means the love to know ourselves, the love to be aware of ourself alone. That is true bhakti. And vairagya is the freedom from desires for other things. Because so long as we've got strong desires and attachments, strong likes and dislikes, our mind will be constantly going outwards. So all the vasanas, they're the children of the ego. But they are like the soldier, the ego is like the general, and the vasanas are like the soldiers in the army. If we want to kill the general, because he's surrounded by all his strong troops, we can't get at the general. So if we want to kill the general, we first have to greatly weaken his army. Because only when his army becomes very weak can we actually get the general and kill him. So our aim is to kill the general, that's ego. But in order to do so, we have to weaken his army. That's all his Vishaya vasanas who are protecting him. because ego is sustained by its desires. So how to weaken these desires? By exactly the same means by which we will eventually kill the general, namely ego. That means is by turning within. Because the more we try to turn within and attend to ourselves alone, the more we are thereby weakening our desire to go outwards and strengthening our love to go within. Because this can be explained in a way. If you think of it, at every moment in our life, we have a fundamental choice. This is the only choice that is absolutely within our power. That is, either we can attend to things other than ourselves, or we can attend to ourselves. Because of our strong desires and attachments, we naturally are inclined to attend to other things. But every time we choose to attend to ourselves, however briefly, however feebly, we are to that extent weakening that outward-going tendency and strengthening the inward-going tendency. That is, we're cultivating the love to turn within and weakening the desire to go outwards. So by nobody succeeds in this path. In the case of Bhagavan, it took him just 1 second to turn within. But when people asked him about it, how were you able to achieve in just a moment, whereas other people are struggling for? He said, whatever work needed to be done had already been done. Something had been left incomplete, and so it was completed. So Bhagavan said, nobody, that is, Bhagavan sometimes said, this isn't, I'm just trying to remember how exactly he put it. That is, what he implied is that we have to put in the work that is required. There's no bypassing this. The desires and attachments that we have, there are desires and attachments. We've cultivated these desires and attachments. We alone can weaken them and eventually get rid of them. So we have to put in the work. So it doesn't matter. Now we know what is our destination. That is to be aware of ourselves as we actually are. We also know the direct path to that destination, turning our mind within to see ourselves. So once we know what is our goal, once we know what is the direction in which we have to travel to reach that goal, what is there left for us to do? We simply have to travel that road. We may be, if you want to travel to New York, you're in Houston. You can probably get to New York much quicker than I can, because I'm the other side of the Atlantic. So, but you have to take the straight road to go to New York. I have to take the straight road to New York. You may get there before me, but what does it matter? I can't get there any quicker than, I mean, we cannot start from any point on the road except the point where we now stand. So it doesn't matter where we are on the road, whether we are 1 mile from New York or 100 miles from New York or 1,000 miles from New York or 10,000 miles from New York. If we want to go to New York, we have to go in that direction by whatever means possible. Well, the means itself is the path that Bhagavan has shown us. The means is self-investigation and self-surrender. So however strong our desires and attachments may be, we just have to try our best, gradually. In Bhagavad Gita, there's a verse in which Krishna is talking about this, though he doesn't call it Atma-vichara. Actually, he's describing there Atma-vichara, because he says Atma samstam manakritva, fix the mind in self, in oneself. But at the beginning of that verse, he says, Sane. Sane means slowly, gently, gradually. In Tamil, Bhagavan, when he translated that verse in Bhagavad Gita Saram, he said, Mella Mella, slowly, slowly. Because we cannot overcome all our desires and attachments all of a sudden. But if we slowly, slowly, patiently try to turn our mind within as much as possible, it's like a snowballing process. When a small pebble begins to roll down from the top of the mountain, which is covered with snow, it will start off very slowly. As it goes, it picks up more and more snow. The more snow it picks up, the faster it goes. The faster it goes, the more snow, more rapidly it picks up snow. And eventually it goes down to the bottom of the mountain and gets smashed to smithereens. Likewise, on this path, it doesn't matter how slowly we begin. The important thing is to begin. And it doesn't matter whether we're going to achieve it in this lifetime or next lifetime or 10 lifetimes or 100 lifetimes. We have to do the work which is necessary. We have to be very grateful to Bhagavan that he has brought us to this path, that he has sown this seed of love in our heart to at least begin trying. And let it take any amount of time. We can't go any faster. A toddler cannot run an Olympic race. But one day that toddler may be an Olympic gold medalist. He may be the fastest Olympic runner. But he has to start off toddling. So he starts off toddling, falling over, toddling, falling over. Only gradually he'll learn to walk. Once he learns to walk, he'll learn to run. When he learns to run, he'll find I'm a very fast runner. And he'll be able to train and eventually become an Olympic gold medalist. But he had to start off toddling. So we may all be toddlers on this spiritual path, but at least let us toddle. At least let us try. Because if you watch a small child learning to walk, it will fall over so many times. It will take so many unsteady steps. But have you ever seen a child who gets deterred by failure? The child is determined, he wants to walk, and no amount of falling over will deter it. It's the very nature of a child to want to walk. So also it's our very nature to seek happiness. And from experience we've learned, we may get little pleasures here and there, but we can derive no satisfaction, no deep and abiding satisfaction from anything in this world. We may have all the wealth, everything that could be desired in this world we may have, but still we'd be dissatisfied. Because dissatisfaction is the very nature of ego, because our nature is infinite happiness. Infinite happiness means infinite satisfaction. As ego, at the very best we can experience only a finite satisfaction. So our satisfaction is mixed with dissatisfaction. But we cannot rest until we achieve that infinite satisfaction that is our real nature. So having been disappointed by everything else, we have now come to this path. Now we just have to follow this path. Just like the nature of a child will impel it to walk, to learn to walk, our nature, which is happiness, will impel us to continue striving until we achieve the happiness that we actually are. So now we've come to this path, all we have to do is mella mella, taṉai taṉai, gradually, gently, softly, do our best to turn within. The more we do this, the more our desires and attachments will drop off, the more easy our surrender will become, the more pleasant our surrender will become. Even let us suppose that we have very strong desires and attachments, so it's going to take us, say, 100 lifetimes to to weaken our desires and attachments sufficiently to get at their root, the ego, and to cut it. Supposing, let us say, hypothetically, that it's going to take us 100 lifetimes. even then we shouldn't worry, because the path that Bhagavan has given us is not only a path to happiness, it is a path of happiness. Because the more we let go, the more we surrender ourselves, the easier our life will become. So whatever, we all know life throws at us all sorts of experiences. Sometimes we have happy experiences, sometimes we have unhappy experiences. Sometimes we're in a very awkward position, sometimes all sorts of troubles compile on top of us. But the more we surrender, the easier it will be to bear with any amount of trials and tribulations in life. So the path of surrender is the path of happiness, because the more we let go, the happier we will be. I don't know if you know Tamil, but there's a verse in Tirukkural that Bhagavan often used to quote, Yādalin Yādalin Nīndinar Nodal Ādalin Ādalin Ilan. That basically means from whatever you withdraw yourself, or whatever you give up, you're free from the suffering caused by that thing. So the more we surrender ourselves, the easier our life will be. The more we resign ourselves to the will of Bhagavan, the more we accept whatever happens in our life as his sweet will for our own spiritual benefit, the easier and happier our life will be. So Bhagavan's path is the path of love, is the path of happiness. So, of course, ultimately we want to get rid of ego, but so long as we are lumbered with this ego, so long as we are not yet ready to let go entirely, we at least have been given a pleasant path by Bhagavan, a path of letting go, a path of surrender. And surrender and self-investigation are two sides of the same coin, because in order to investigate ourselves, we need to turn within. In order to turn within, we've got to let go of everything else. So there can be no self-investigation without surrender, and there can be partial surrender without self-investigation, but there cannot be deep surrender without self-investigation. So actually, these are one and the same path. So we are so fortunate to come to Bhagavan's path, this path of happiness, of love. Yes, sorry.
Michael, you have been in his path for 30, 40 some years, right? So yes. I suppose you are able to see that, feel that happiness.
Well, the thing is, we can't really tell. We can't tell. Supposing I had never come to this path, how I would have ended up, what sort of a person I would have been, what sort of worries and cares and concerns I would have had. Obviously, I don't know. But what I do know is that having come to this path, I can see how, though I have to be honest with myself, I still have very strong desires and attachments, but I assume it seems to me that those desires and attachments must be less than they were 30 or 40 years ago, because now basically I'm living a more carefree and a more happy life. The difficulties of life don't seem so daunting as they did 30 or 40 years ago. So I think slowly, almost imperceptibly to ourselves, our desires and attachments are dropping off. But we don't have to measure our progress. Our progress doesn't matter, because the only progress that really matters is the final step, which is annihilation of ego. As long as we're following the path as best as we can, we are making progress. That's all we need to know.
Thanks, Michael.
And people often say to me, but you've been following this path for 40 years. What benefit have you got? All I can say is, well, I feel content with the path I'm following. I can't say I've not attained the ultimate happiness or anything, but I am, the more I follow this path, the more satisfied I am with this path. The less my mind has any inclination to go to anything else. And it may take me another 40 lifetimes, 400 lifetimes, it doesn't matter. Everyone has set me on the right path, and however many births I may take, I may not take any. Who knows? I mean, maybe the next moment may be the end. I'm not anticipating for 40 or 400 lives, but I'm just saying if it happens, everyone who has put me on this path now will arrange any future lives in such a way that I'll continue following this. I'll come across his teachings again, I'll continue following them. So I am very, very confident. Everyone is doing his part. All I have to do is, as he said at the end of the 12th paragraph, well, in the 12th paragraph he says, 12th paragraph of ṉeṉṉai, that is, he says, just like that which is in the jaws of the tiger cannot escape, those who have who have been caught in the glance of Guru's grace will surely be saved and never forsaken. That's a very great assurance Bhagavan gives us. But then he adds, eninum Guru Kartiya Varipadi Kavarada Nadaka Vendam. Nevertheless, it is necessary to follow without fail the path shown by Guru. So Bhagavan is doing all the help that is necessary. Bhagavan is taking care of us in every way possible. But he has given us a small task to do. Slowly, slowly, gently, gently, gradually, gradually, mella, mella, sannai, sannai, turn your attention within. Try to fix your mind in yourself. That's all we have to do.
Thank you. Yeah.
Hi, Michael.
Hi.
Michael, in self-investigation, what do you investigate? Do you investigate the true nature of yourself, or do you investigate the ego? And how do you differentiate? How do you differentiate between your ego and the true nature of yourself when you're self-investigating?
Okay. As to what we're investigating, supposing you were walking along a dark path at night with Bhagavan, and you see something lying on the path and think it's a snake. And Bhagavan knows it's a rope. So Bhagavan tells you, no, don't worry, it's not a snake, it's a rope. But still you're a little bit afraid. You're not fully convinced. So Bhagavan says, look at it carefully and see. If you ask Bhagavan, which should I look at? Should I look at the rope or should I look at the snake? What would he say to you?
The rope.
He would probably say to you, look at the snake. Because you think it's a snake.
Okay.
But whether he says, look at the snake or look at the rope, what difference does it make? So we are now investigating ego. So we are investigating ego to find out, ego means ourself, what we now seem to be. We are investigating ego to find out the real nature of ego. So we're not two things, our real nature and ego. Our real nature now seems to us to be ego. We mistake it as ego. That's one part of your question, whether it really, you could say it in any way, but generally Bhagavan talks about investigating ego. But he also says, investigate where this ego rises. Where did the snake rise? From the rope, obviously. Ego rises from ourself, from our real nature. So when he says investigate where it rises, the it that rises is ego, but the where it rises is our real nature. So it really doesn't matter whether you think of it in terms of investigating ego or investigating your real nature. It's provided you understand this correctly. But for many people, Bhagavan said, no, it's not just investigate ego. Because they're so firmly convinced that they are ego, whatever you now experience as how you investigate that. So we're investigating ego. How to distinguish ego from our real nature? How to distinguish the snake from the rope? The only way to distinguish the snake from the rope is to look at the snake very carefully. Because if you look at the snake carefully enough, you think, oh, it's only a rope. So you distinguish it by seeing the rope. So to distinguish your real nature from ego, you've got to see your real nature. How to see your real nature? Look at your ego. Or look at your real nature, whichever you choose. Because it's the same thing. Is that clear, that answer?
Yes, thank you. But when I investigated the ego, Michael, it's a follow-up question.
Yeah.
I discovered a little bit that it seemed to arise from the I. There's something called the I of the society. The society, in general, it seemed the I of the society seemed to have something to do with it. Like my ego wants to be in high status or gain something, and appear to be in a high level to that I of the society.
No,
Did,
that is putting the cart before the horse, because society is a phenomenon we see in this world, isn't it? When does the world appear? Only when you rise as ego, you become aware of yourself as I am a body, and you consequently see through the five senses of that body to the world. So and in that world you see a society with all its artificial constructs and everything, human constructs. Without a world, there's no society. Without a body, there's no world. Because without a body, how can you see the world? And without ego, there's no body. So ego is that's why Bhagavan says it. Ego comes into existence, everything comes into existence. If ego doesn't exist, because generally when people talk about ego, they're thinking about egotism. Egotism is a quality of ego. It's the nature of ego to be egotistical. And the stronger ego is, the more egotistical it will be. But with ego is a Latin word. It means I. So ego is nothing but I. The term Bhagavan generally used in Tamil, sometimes he used the word ahankara, but more commonly he used the word ahande. Ahande is actually a Tamil form of the Sanskrit ahanta. Ahanta means I-ness. Ahankara means the formed I, the made I. So ahankara and ahande are one and the same thing. But it's all only I, the subject. Everything else is an object. The body is an object, the world is an object, society is an object. They're all things perceived by us. But who is the one who perceives this society and therefore wants to become a big person in society? That is ego. The ego is the perceiver. That is why in ancient texts, when talking about this, distinguishing ourselves from everything that we seem to be, they refer to ego as sakshi. Sakshi means witness. But ego is the perceiver. As ego, we now identify ourselves as I am this person, I am this body. But this body is actually an object perceived by me. The person I seem to be is an object perceived by me. My thoughts are objects. My desires are objects. Everything is something perceived by me. So I am the subject, everything else is object. Subject means the witness, the one of the perceiver. So that is, we have to distinguish ego from everything else. If we distinguish ego from everything else and focus our entire attention just upon ego at that moment will disappear, and what will remain is pure awareness. Because ego seems to exist only so long as we're referring to anything other than ourselves. In sleep, we're not aware of anything other than ourselves, there's no ego. In waking and dream, the very nature of ego is always to be aware of things other than itself. So if we, this ego, turn our attention back, try to be aware of ourself alone, thereby letting go of everything else, what remains is not ego, but just pure awareness. That is why Bhagavan refers to ego as uḷḷadu, formless phantom ego. It has no form of its own. Ego seems to exist only when it's grasping other forms, which of course are all projected by it. So all we need to do is to try more and more to be attentively self-aware, to attend to ourself alone.
Sorry, the sound was a little bad. Can you?
Okay, all we need to do is to try to be attentively self-aware. That means to attend to ourself alone. But ourself obviously isn't an object. When we say attend to ourself, it sounds like ourself is an object we're attending to. What attend to ourself means is be attentively self-aware. Because we're always self-aware, but generally, though we are self-aware, we're more interested in other things than in our own self-awareness. So we need to focus just on our self-awareness. Because our self-awareness is the background. It's like Bhagavan often said, it's like the screen on which the pictures appear.